Well, hello and welcome to Work Cookie, our weekly gathering of IOs, HRs, recruiters, and an actor as we try to make the world of work just a little bit better. And today, Nick, you're going to be leading us. Welcome to the front panel. And you're going to be talking about beyond the degree, finding your footing in the IO field, which is great because we talk all the time about how IO psychology is the oldest profession in the world you've never heard of. But the amount of graduates, like the field is exploding. And I'm a big fan of IO psychology. I think you guys are incredible people, and can really help us to not only help our organizations grow and achieve success, but to make them a place that people want to show up every single morning. So if I've just graduated, or if I'm in that final year, what do I need to know? I mean, is there a future in IO psychology?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think that it's an extraordinarily exciting degree, and this is kind of a revisit of episode 257, I believe. It was an open discussion with Dr. Morton a few months back. It was right around May, right around graduation time. So I thought, as we're getting to the end of the year, take a look back at some of the discussions we've had over the last year, take a second bite of the cookie, as it were, and really just kind of come back because I don't know how many people get off the call and 10 minutes later goes, oh, I wish I would have said that, or what about this point, or I got to go read that article that somebody put in the chat. So revisiting some of the topics is kind of what the agenda is for November. And this felt apt because as I went back and listened to that episode, the biggest advice that came from everybody in the room was start now. If you're about to graduate, start yesterday. Build your network, find your resources, and all of that. And so I just, wanted to kind of open up to again a fairly open discussion. But in re-listening to that, kind of the highlights were again, build your network, find the people, find your IOs, find your friends, get close to the people and roles that you want to be around. IO does have a branding problem. You have a point where you have to say very long words and make them make sense very quickly. And so just kind of trying to find that rebrand for yourself and for the field, being able to explain what you can do, and then also kind of sharpening the knife to say, this is what I want to do and going to find it. I think that there is a lot of impatience when it comes to job searching. We want to find the job as soon as possible, if not sooner. And so there's tons of emotions that are fraught, stability, all of these things, and you can lose sight of what you have versus what you want. And we get going super fast and think of it as a job and not a career. You think, oh, I need a paycheck, I need this, and you don't stop to think, well, what is it that I do bring to the table? What is it in IO that I specifically want to focus on? How do I define that for people? How do I show that to people? And yes, you have a wonderful degree. You worked very, very hard to get it. Nobody cares, to be blunt. You can't just say, here, look at my certifications. You have to show why they're valuable and what you do bring to the table. And we all know that IO teaches you, research backing, look at the final picture, and all of that. But lots of hands up already. So, Emmy, let's jump over to you.
Thanks, Nick. I'll start with yes, and so I appreciate. I know it can sound really curt, right? But there are many things in the workplace that we try to bring and sell, like our degrees and experience and things. But that there needs to be that added element of what else you're bringing to the table outside of the title in your degree, right? IO psychology, at least from the experience I've had in networking, is a popular because of its wide applicability, I think. And this is more conversational, awareness that I've had as I've gotten to know people, why they picked it. Oftentimes there's even a precipice for it that's in something that they've experienced as a workplace issue that could be solved with an IO psychology principle, right? And so I think there's a lot of flexibility in having this background. There's a lot of different paths that you can take. And we say that I think, pretty often as we talk about this topic specifically. But what I want to really encourage and advocate is then also having a secondary expertise in this field, right? So maybe that is hiring and training. Maybe that is performance management or some other data related skill set. If you love that side, I did not love that side of school, right? I am not number completely averse, but almost number completely averse. I'm very much on the qualitative side, right? And so that to me is having some other, power punch. For me, that's technology. I was going into my technology career. It's been almost 20 years in that field, and in parallel, working on the IO psychology side, and something made a collision somewhere along the way in that intersection. IO psychologists can have an expertise in healthcare. You can have an expertise in sports teams, right? It really is that wide. But being able to pick and select what your personal passionate interest is, and then B, what experience you're bringing to the table, I think is that real powerhouse of where you're going to go with that degree versus trying to search in your search bar for IO psychology jobs, right? I almost never even see that in any of the roles that I personally would want to take. Sometimes it's in there, but when I say like very rarely do I see that in the roles that I think my experience and education combined set me up for success for, very rarely does it say IO specifically. So I very much encourage and offer that as advice even to folks. Have that secondary area of expertise that you want to niche in so that you can start growing and networking there or building experience in organizations in that area.
That is great advice. Thank you very much for that. Jason, let's pop over to you.
Yeah, I appreciate it. So I was very excited about this topic. I truly am. I had the honor and pleasure the other day of talking for Austin, Texas, their little community that they have going on with their students, and we talked about risk management and how IO and risk management come, side by side. And I'll tell you, the biggest plus about IO is, as everybody's already stated, there is no ends. I mean, we have organizations everywhere, right? And you can really find your niche, and you can find what your interests are, and you can expand on that, and you can be incredibly successful. The one thing I would add is to be involved with the SIOP committees, and not only as a student member, and do it as soon as possible, and write for the professional publications, just submission, right? If you don't get published right away, that's completely fine. Don't worry about it. You're gaining that experience of using professional language that's applicable to the different, and I'm not just talking about writing for PSYOP or APA or whatever it may be. I'm talking about like Loss Prevention Magazine if you're into loss prevention risk management, or expanding into security and or whatever it may be, right? So, but right in there and include what IO can, and what you've learned in your programs, and include what IO can do within that profession and how we can contribute. Not only does that get your name out there, but it also shows how the skills that you've learned throughout your education can be applicable. You'll never know what kind of hit you get then. So that's my take.
Man, I'd love to walk into an interview and go, "Oh, by the way, I wrote an article."
Yeah, right.
Just on, whatever it is that's bothering you in your organization, I've written an article. That would be so powerful. Thank you very much for that. Lee, over to
you. Well, the first thing, because we've had this conversation. I mean, I don't have enough finger and toes to count the number of times we've had this conversation with, early career and students. Outside of academia and the government, there are no IO jobs. But that said, they're all IO jobs. And so the key is, and Pat loves when I do this, as good old Dr. Powasser says, if you have to explain the joke, it isn't funny. So don't go in trying to explain what IO is, because I can tell you they don't care. Their eyes are going to glaze over, they're going to drool on themselves, and you're not going to get the job. So go in talking about what you can do. Talk about the pain point that you can solve. Talk about the things that you have accomplished. Because guess what? If you have some IO background, if you go back and look at jobs that you have had, it doesn't matter if you were a cashier at McDonald's. You have relevant experience. You just have to use the right words. Now, that doesn't mean make things up, doesn't mean fabricate. That means using the right words through the right lens to describe what you did. Because you have experience, you just have to apply it correctly. And, this also comes back to, IO is niche driven. I mean, IO is massive. I mean, if you look at, you ever go look at like the SIOP page for career page and look at the number of job titles held by people with IO, get comfortable. It's going to take a minute. Any job out there has been held by somebody with an IO degree. I mean, I've every job I've had since my degree, none of them has had the title IO, but I have done IO work in all of them. And you just have to make sure that you are using the correct language to describe that. And really, and I'm just going to spread this out even further. It doesn't so much matter what the degree is. But what matters is when you go into an industry and you go into an organization and you try to get them to hire you to do a thing, that you use language they understand. Do your research, do your homework, figure out, is there jargon that is specific to that industry and that organization so that you can speak the language that they understand that shows that you have done your homework. Because in the end, and this is one of those things that just absolutely floors me, do not write your resume that looks like a job description. Let me say that again. Do not write your resume that looks like a job description. I like to call it the what and the so what. What did you do and what was the result? Tell me what you accomplished. That's what I want to know as a hiring manager. That's what I want to know. I mean, job description, I can look that up. That's easy. I can make it up. But tell me what you did and what was the result. And if you can't get metrics, okay, cool. I mean, sometimes you can't. I increased the ROI by 2.27. You can still tell me what happened. Increasing efficiencies or whatever it is you're doing. You managed change and managed a major company change with zero turnover. That actually is bigger than you think. There are things that you can do. There are measures that you can use to talk about the impact that you can have. And guess what? If you've got a degree in IO from a reputable school, you've got the knowledge. And, and then I'm going to segue real quick because we can't foot stomp this enough. Get out there and network. Talk to people in the field that you want to go into. Talk to other people in the IO field. There's overlap, but they're not necessarily the same group. And informational interviews are powerful. Someone who's doing a thing that you're interested in, have a chat. Tell me about your day. What do you do? Don't beg these people for jobs. God forbid, don't do that. But what do you do? Tell me about your day. What does a day look like? What does this organizational culture look like? Ask those questions, and you would be surprised the number of people who will say yes. And if they don't, they just won't answer you. So what? So, and with that, I'm going to shut up because Linda Ann's got something brilliant to say. So thanks.
Thank you very much, Lee. And one job I would love to see an IO psychologist do, President of the United States of America. I think that would be a great experiment, and I think we should start a movement. Lee's going to think about that. Linda Ann, let's go to you.
Wow, that was a mouthful. Well, I don't. Most of what I have to say is an iteration of what's already been said. But the piece that I think is most important, and what I see happening is when I talk to IO students, they have ideas of what they want to go into and so forth, because it's all about the external. And what's really important in my mind is what's internal. Where's your passion? It has to come from a passion. And what problem does that passion solve? Right? If you can connect solution to passion, that's magic. And so when I talk to people, they'll come with ideas of what they think they might want to go to and so forth. And I'm like, what's the dream? If you could clear the table, what's the dream? Nick's smiling because he's heard me say it a million times. And let's start there, because if you understand what that is for you, a lot of times you can have it, right? Stop taking detours. And so really think about that. And then, to also what it was, I think Lee was saying, the translation of what you've done to what you want to do that's all it is putting it into Google Translate, and have it something like that, and translate what you've done into something that's significant in IO. And that's what we do in a lot of the Pathfinder meetings, is figure out how to take whatever that job description resume you have is and translate it into something that's meaningful to the job of the passion that you have, right? Because you can, when somebody is passionate about something, it just lights up the room.
I think that's a great analogy of sort of standing there and having not just one IO psychology path in front of you, but standing there with dozens of possible avenues you can explore. And, using your passion as a compass is really a smart way to go. So thank you very much for that. Nick, let's go back to you.
Yeah, having just listened to the previous conversation, there's so many of the same ideas that keep echoing. And yes, I have heard Linda Ann say that 1,000 times, and I'm going to need to hear it 1,000 more. And so I think that's why it's important to revisit some of these conversations, because particularly when you're in a transition, coming out of a degree, going into the workplace, changing jobs, whatever it is that has you out in the job market, it's something you get so locked into and so laser focused on, we forget that it's supposed to be fun. We forget that we get a choice in what we do for a living. And being led by passion is a way to make it a whole lot easier to get out of bed and go to work if you are trying to line up your passion. To echo what Emmy said, don't pigeonhole yourself too soon. You can find that area where IO or training where it needs to be. Whether that's I want to go work for my favorite sports team, or hey, there's a robotics firm that's coming up in town. You have the ability, and you can be bold enough to say, hey, I have this particular set of skills. Take a look, see if there's going to be something coming down the pipeline. And when you kind of advocate for yourself and take that drive in a career transition, it's scary, it's stressful. There's it's where's where the bill's going to get paid and all of that sort of thing. There's practical, real reality with it, but there's also kind of that fulfillment. You get a chance to take a good long look at yourself, and you may not always like what you see, but you do have to take care of yourself, because as much as we want it to be, and as much as we study fair selection in degree programs, it's not fair out there. Not everybody is doing the right thing in hiring. There are ghost postings. There are bad recruiters. There are 1,000 ways to do it wrong. But I can't sleep at night without also thinking there's 1,000 ways to do it right. And there are companies out there that are doing it right. And if you advocate for yourself and put yourself in front of those lenses, I think that there's a lot that can be done. I am the self-proclaimed starry-eyed optimist, and I think that work will get better the more we have people thinking about the whole person at work and things like that, which is something I know Dr. Emmy is very good at. So I will let her take the floor.
Dr. Emmy, over to you.
Hey, so before I jump into the comment I was going to make, I did put something in the chat just for you, Tom. When I was a 10-year-old little girl, I had several dreams: to be a singer, to be a writer, to be a doctor, and to be the first female president of the United States. And 3 out of 4, I have checked those boxes. I am not aware of what my digital footprint looked like. We didn't talk about that when I was in high school and we started the internet. So I don't know, that one I'm not so sure about going down. People get canceled so fast these days. So I'll stick to the 3 out of 4. But it is something that I think there's probably a few IOs out there who had that dream there too. So I'm behind you on that one. I think the other 2 things I want to mention, one, this concept of the T-shaped individual. I think what the IO psychology degree does is give you the breadth of information that you need to be successful in the workplace in many ways. So it is the long line on a T-shaped individual. The depth, which is kind of the area of expertise for an individual, is going to be that down line on the T-shape. of skills, right? And so I think knowing what area of depth, what functional area, discipline, specialty, right, is a really great way to kind of think about where to start putting efforts in. We've mentioned networking, we've mentioned different experience, but I'm going to go to the other side because I think often what we talk about is the student coming out, with the deer in the headlights eyes. But I want to kind of encourage those who are in the field, who do have even volunteer opportunities where people can gain practical experience to be able to do business related things for students. Please do that. That is something I have been doing a lot more of lately. PhD students that want to be able to graduate and say, I have had 2 years of helping with a customer relationship management system, or 2 years of being able to help with digital media and marketing, right? So whatever those things are they're interested in, that I might have opportunities for people to help me, because at the end of the day, I don't have enough hands to do all the things I want to do anyway. I very much encourage those folks who are deeply working in the field, who are invested in organizations that can use a hand. But if you've got budget, cool, perfect, use it that way. But even if it's volunteer, there are a lot of students out there who would love to gain even volunteer experience so they can slap that on their resume when they walk away with a degree in IO psychology or a related field, like learning and development or organizational leadership, all of those kind of related things. Give them those opportunities. I think it is a beautiful way to give back also. Someone's probably helped you along the way in your career, helping you move and mentoring you or whatever it is, right? Offering some opportunities. That's something that if you are a very seasoned professional, that's a way to kind of help pave the way for other students coming down the path.
And I should just mention that, if you are a student listening to the Work Cookie podcast, join CBOC, become a member, and you can have access to great mentors that basically you can just call up and have a chat with. So thank you very much for that. Jason, over to you.
Appreciate it. So one thing I was kind of thinking of, we are focusing a lot on the student who's transitioning or whatever it may be. But for those of us in middle adulthood who are losing a career or, doing something midlife, trying to figure out where to go. Maybe we got sick and developed PTSD. We can't be firemen and cops anymore, or whatever it may be. Consider IO, because we aren't clinical necessarily. You can be, of course, but we aren't clinical, and it is a safe spot. I have found a safe spot where you can still be a helper, where you can still contribute to, the way of life, I guess you would say, or of employees, and improve the workplace. But and kind of contribute to your community still, even if you're not able to do it, in the more pro or the active spots. So I would just kind of put that out there. IO is definitely, if you are thinking of where do I do or what do I do now or whatever it may be, consider looking into IO and going down that study route. So sorry for jumbling my words a little bit there, but
that's okay. Let me ask you, Jason, is there value if I'm an IO psychology student? I've maybe got a couple of years left for my degree, and I do come from one of those small towns. If I go back and volunteer with my community association, if I get involved with my local community, is that going to help me in a year or two when I'm looking for a job to have that experience working in the nonprofit sector?
Oh, I think any experience whatsoever, it's going to help you in nonprofit or anywhere, right? Because experience is what is our foundation. Without experience, then what do we have other than, well, our experience? It's everything. So if you can get out there and you can get experience anywhere it is, please, by all means, interact with the community, interact with employees, learn the different jobs and how financial people work and think and stuff, work on or learn how operations works and things, learn how executives work and think, it's anywhere you can go. And there is a big difference between the culture as far as a nonprofit and a company that is, corporate versus mom and pop owned and that kind of stuff. And if you're working as a consultant, great, but you still have to have the experience to be able to kind of branch out to different businesses as well. Great question. Thank you.
Well, here's another niche for IO psychology. We need you in the acting profession. We need IO psychologists in rehearsals and on film sets because, boy, is there a lot of drama there. Thank you very much for that.
It's actually pretty amazing, to tell you the truth. I was actually out in the town the other day. I think it was in Winter Park actually, and there was a new like employee or business owner who was getting hit by shoplifting, and they were to a point where they could not afford really truly to live, right, or to keep their business open. So being able to help them understand how to cope with, and then even respond to, those type of that conflict within the workplace, as an owner, is incredibly powerful. So I agree with you. I mean, the small business world, I think, is wide open to IO psychology. I haven't seen a lot of literature on there or anything, but sorry.
Yeah, I think that's one of the trends for the future is every small business. Oh my God, you need an psychologist. Thank you very much for that. Dr. Kim, let's go over to you.
Well, good afternoon. I'm on the academic side. Haven't been a practitioner for a very long time. I've been in academia for 20 some years now. And I have a lot of undergraduate and graduate students that come to me on a regular basis. And one of the things that I tell them is, what's going to set you apart with your degree versus someone else walking out of the institution with the same degree. And one of those things is the soft skills. It's going to be your written and your written communication, your oral communication, your dependability, your adaptability, the flexibility, the everything that's going to make you different from the person next to you. You may come out with the same degree, but it's all those social skills, soft skills. Those are what's going to make a difference. And I think a lot of the students that we have lately are generationally now, some of those things are missing. And that is something that I'm noticing with the students that I teach, different disciplines. IO Psych students are not missing those soft skills, which is a plus for us, which is a really good plus for us. Because I think that they need to they have those dynamics. They know that, there's a lot that we have to have in the workplace. We have to, be culturally aware as far as the climate and the industries go, and culture, climate, DEI, and things like that. So I'm noticing that within the academics coming out, that they are a little bit more structured and ready to go. The other thing that I wanted to point out was we have a number of students who assume that once they get that piece of paper, I can take a breather, learning stops, I'm done. And they're missing that part. It's not over. You're never done. Learning never stops. That piece of paper never goes away. And my piece of advice would be, just keep the academic reading going, keep the scholarship reading going, keep the everything reading going. Whether it's, joining into organizations, whether it's, the IO pop-up community, or coming to listen to podcasts like CBOC, or jumping into PSYOP or something and reading articles, or just connecting, to other professionals. And when they put out an article or something, read it, keep up with the learning, keep up with the connecting, because I think that's where students assume that once they've got that paper all done, now I can go find the job, and, the learning part is done. So it's a misconception that they've got.
We talk about the soft skills or the people skills, and I'm a big fan of communication as well. And, understand that today a lot of people don't know how to communicate well or properly. A lot of issues. What is the opportunity in a field like communication for IO psychologists to make a significant change in an organization?
Well, I think there's a lot that we could do. I think a lot of it just is just getting in there and having the conversations, just to start and to communicate about communication. That these skills are missing, I think, is part of the problem. There's not enough research being done up front to say that these things are missing. We're just now treading those navigating waters. We're just starting to dip our toes in there to realize that the digital age is taking over, and they're missing these skills now. We're not getting the research done like we need to. From an academic standpoint, we're always kind of behind the curve when it comes to these things. And that's really sad. AI is here, and we're just now getting implemented into the classrooms. We're behind the curve, and the students are well ahead of us on that too. So I think a lot needs to be done. But, from an organizational standpoint, having IOs go to an organization and say, listen, we need to get generations working together so we can have these conversations about just manners in general. And this is how you do corporate communication. And this is how you type out an email properly. Some of those workshops need to happen, lunch and learns and things like that.
That's so vitally important, especially today when we've lost the ability to communicate, and like we're not even having conversations anymore because we're afraid it might go sideways on us. So just having the ability to communicate and know what you're doing is such an advantage today. So thank you very, very much for that. Nick, back to you.
Yeah, I think that, we, for job seekers, again, we say network, but it can't be a transactional sort of thing. Show up and keep showing up. Over the last 2-3 years with CBOC, there are people who show up in these little boxes every week that I have had the fortune to actually meet in person as well. But there are so many tools available to build that network, to get in front of people, to let your voice be heard, or to ask questions. But you've got to keep showing up, and it's not just something when you're on the job hunt and transactional. And can you tell me about this? Can you tell me about that? It's also got to be once you're in the day to day. It's never going to go away. It's always going to be something you have to do. Much like Dr. Kim said, you're always constantly learning. You're trying to take this big blanket of IO psychology topics, and now you're trying to wrap it around something concrete. We're working with a financial institution, or we're working with a government institution, and how does that really take shape? And how do you see these concepts come alive in specific situations? The standard answer is it depends, and we all love that joke. But it really does. We talk about high level good ideas. Well, how do we put that in play for organization A through X, and make it worthwhile? Because to Jason's point, it is a helping profession. We're trying to improve work life for people. And I couldn't tell you how many stories are just like mine. I wanted psychology because I wanted to help people. And then I got to a counseling skills course, and I realized I talk too much and offer solutions too quickly to really help people do that emotional work. And so I had to find a different corner of the broad blanket of psychology in order to really take that excitement, take that desire to help and improve, and find a place for it to live as well.
Let me ask you this, and I'm not sure if this is a good idea or not, but if you have a passion for a certain industry, let's say, my family comes from the oil industry, and I don't want to become a rig pig, but I love IO psychology and I want to see if I can help the oil industry. What about the idea of going to things like conventions and trade shows and talking to those representatives, if just for research, if nothing else, but it'll help you get more information on an organization. Is there value in IO psychology students, doing that sort of thing?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you kind of hit the nail on the head. If we're trying to be driven by passion, take the things that you're interested in. I am not an engineer. I could barely turn a wrench some days. But, I think that engineering does a lot of great good. There's a ton of aerospace companies out this way as well. And it's fascinating. It's an exciting field. I can't design the rockets, but I can help design a workplace for the people who build the rockets. And I think that's where, you said, Hollywood could use IO psychologists, and you're probably right. My background in hospitality, like there's a lot of things that are specific to a particular industry or a particular company that until you really get in there and see what it is, you can help, you have the solutions. But to Lee's point, you have to speak their language. You have to get in front of the right people. There's a certain amount of luck and serendipity that happens, unfortunately, and you can't account for it. But I think that if you are passionate about an area, oil families or whatever, but you don't want to, do the exact thing, bringing the expertise and trying to bring the information to those places is great. And the more people you talk to, it's important to network with other IOs, but it's also very important to network with everybody. You're never going to know who you bump into. We can get in our bubble a little bit, and we have our jargon and things like that. But the HR people are doing great work. People are lucking into finding the right way to do things. And so not assuming that we have all the answers, but also going to see where is it going right, where is it going wrong, and what are the factors there. You've got to be curious. You've got to take that that sense of purpose and take it out there. And I'll leave it at that.
Thank you very much. And Linda Ann, let's go back to you.
I want to reiterate something that Dr. Kim said, and that's the continuous learning piece. What I see in a lot of junior staff that are holding significant positions, but they're early in their career, they are not spending the time to continue that education, to read those articles, to expand their knowledge, and which is so amazing to me because it's so easy to do. All you have to do is open your phone and you've got a feed of stuff and you can curate it and keep yourself up. So it's incredible, but you think about how quickly the world is changing. You have to stay current on everything that's happening in your, even if it's just what you're passionate about. Read what you're passionate about, but stay current and stay knowledgeable about that particular thing. With regard to looking for a job in this field, it's important to understand that you cannot look for a title. You have to look at what the job does. You're not going to find, you can't go looking for like a change management title. That's going to be a hard press, right? And the reason for that is you also have to look at what kind of a company do you want to work for? I usually take people through, okay, how much juice do you need and from what you do? And for example, if you really want to see an impact in change management or whatever it is, first of all, change management jobs, those kinds of things don't really occur in a company that's under 250, 300 people. Right? So you have to decide, do you want to work for a really large company, be part of a team, and then maybe not really see the huge impact that you can make? So you have to decide what kind of company that you want to work for, what size company that you want to work for, and then decide where your passion lies and do you have a match? If you want to do change management in a small company, that's not a match. Because it comes under another guise, right? And so there's really a process to go through because you can spin your wheels really for a long time if you're not looking for something where there's a match.
You can waste a lot of time if you don't get focused. Thank you very much for that. Lee, back to you.
Yeah, just to add on to what Linda Ann just said, that you gotta understand something when we're talking small business versus larger organizations. Small business, you're gonna have to be more of a generalist, because like the change management, the person doing change management is not it's not the change manager. They have a job and then they also do change management. That's the sort of thing that happens in small businesses, especially when you're talking startups. People wear multiple hats. You have to go in with that knowledge. If you're looking at a particular niche and that's what you want to do, you're gonna have to go into a larger organization. If you want to have, in this example, if you want to be a change manager as a title and job, you're gonna have to be in a large organization that is constantly doing some form of change initiatives that you can manage. If you're in a small company, it's gonna be just one of the things you do. Project management, a lot of times a small company, just going to be one of the things you do. It's not going to be your primary job. So you need to go in understanding that. But that said, coming out of a program, not necessarily a bad option, because when you come out of a program, what are you? You're a generalist. You don't have that specific industry experience yet. And you may not even know what you want to do. I mean, hell, at my age, I still don't know what I want to be when I grow up. Of course, the growing up part is still optional, I think. But you can do that, and you can go into the more generalist type role, dip your feet into a couple of different pools, and figure out, kind of like Goldilocks. This one's just right. But you got to try the others to know that. You got to have a comparison. And I kind of envy those people that are just, I know what I want to do, and good on you. I hope that works out, because for a lot of people it doesn't, even though they know what they want to do. And just to touch on another couple of things that other people have brought up, doing pro bono work is a very good way to get some experience. You can go in, you can do nonprofit stuff, However, I will caution, if you're going to go into to do some form of IO work, do it as IO work. Go in and go in and do a proposal. I propose that I'm going to do this work for you, and I'm going to do an in-kind donation to your organization worth X amount of dollars or whatever. Do paperwork and write it up. This is what I'm going to do. This is the time frame. Write it up just like they're paying you. Go in, do the project, accomplish what you got to accomplish, finish it up, and then you've got it documented. And you can say, well, it doesn't matter if I got any jingle in my pocket from it at all. It was worth $50K that I donated to this organization that I believe in. But look at all these wonderful things I did. Well, that's experience. And and I've told several people that were spent some time not working for a formal organization. It's not hard to do an LLC. I mean, you could do it online. You could be done before you finish recording, listening to this episode. You do an LLC for consulting, that gives you some legal protection, and anything that you do like that is consulting. It doesn't matter if you got paid for it or not. You provided some form of consulting services to someone. If you could articulate what you did and results and those things, you can use that as experience. And that also helps when you have that period where you're like between organizations. You can go, well, I was doing some individual consulting. So it's a little, you're not trying to fast talk a career gap. And then of course the communication part. Organizations are groups of people. Psychology, duh. IO is where human behavior meets the workplace. I mean, it's right there at the intersection. So that's what we do. We deal with people. So it doesn't necessarily matter so much what the people are doing, what their job is. We deal with people. That's what our job is. So communication is key. You have to be able to communicate. You have to be able to talk. And there's so many things we can do. You can hire Tom as a communication coach, which I recommend, intent. And, learning to do, active communication, reflective communication, all these different things that you can do to actually communicate with the person using the words that they understand. And it's also important to know, culture. Culture is huge. We haven't really touched on that. Cultural stuff is huge because, just the United States, there are different cultures in the United States for people like, native, born in America, not even counting the immigrants, more recent immigrants. You start international, now you got a whole other thing. You got nationality, you got culture groups in there, you have indigenous groups, you have religious groups. You have to be cognizant of those things. And you have to understand that some things that might be normal for you to say could be offensive to someone else just because you used a particular word. There are certain things, communication, nonverbal, eye contact. Some cultures, that's rude. You have to understand those things when you're going into those contexts. And part of that could just be, hey, look, I'm not really familiar. I would love to know more about that. Could we talk about it? Could you tell me? One of my favorite things about working with all the various people in the military was people from different backgrounds. And I could say, I'm not familiar. I want to know more. And people love to talk about themselves, and so they're willing, and they're a lot less likely to take offense at your ignorance when you seek to remedy that, and touching on the continuing ed, don't forget we have other things, like Linda said, you got it on your phone all the time. But there's also things like podcasts and videos and, LinkedIn Lives and things like that. Discussion groups that you can get into to also continue your education, because you got to keep learning.
IO psychologists really are success coaches. Thank you very much for that. Linda Ann, let's go to you.
So what Lee said about making sure that, I think pro bono work is excellent. And I've gotten experience when I was younger, just walking into a place that I wanted to work at and say, I'll volunteer, I'll do it. Like I want the experience, right? And it worked. I got the opportunity, it gave me experience, and it launched part of my career. So I strongly encourage that. And the point he made about making sure you document it and put value on it is critical. It's really important to put value on your work, not just for the company that you're working with, but for yourself, to understand what the value is of what you do. The other thing I wanted to make a point on is one thing that you can do to help create that resume that identifies what you can contribute in a given way. It's not just a job description, is to get a job description. Do reviews of job descriptions. When you're out there searching and you see the job, oh man, this is the job. This is my dream job. This is the job I want. Download it, keep it. Now we have something to work with for getting your resume to match some of the aspects of that job. Just trying to make a resume with experience when you don't have something to match it to make it more specific to, is a real challenge. So make sure you have 2 or 3 jobs that you've downloaded that you go, oh, this is what I want to do. I would love to have this job. Now we can work with, okay, so what have you done in, lab management that meets these criteria, right? So how do we do the conversion, the translation? But we have something to work with. We have an if and then kind of situation we can work with.
Great advice. Nick, back to you.
Yeah, I think that there's, obviously we could probably talk about this several more times, and we likely will. I think that, the idea of don't put off what you need to do, and it's going to be a continuous process. And as I was sitting there thinking, you didn't get this degree by accident. You didn't just stumble into grad school by any stretch of the imagination. You did the hard thing and you did it on purpose. And I think that same level of intentionality does need to come out into, career planning and things like that. We talk about, is an organization sending the same message, to their each of their stakeholders? There has to be intention to be kind of cohesive there. And that's the same for, as much as I hate the term, your personal brand, but you do have to market yourself. You do have to display what you can do. And it's, it's available everywhere. I mean, everybody has a phone with a camera on it, and you could be the next viral sensation. And there's a lot of people who try to go just that route. But I think the more fronts you put yourself out on, whether it's, being the social media guru, being on a podcast, being the writer, being the networker, all of those things, the more things that you put yourself into deliberately, not just, happenstance. There's so many people who, start on the job search and become, a job search coach because they've put more time into that than they have into their degree. But if you have something that you want to say and share with people who are going through a similar thing, by all means, share your voice. It could be heard. There's so much that you get between your ears of, well, I'm only working in a restaurant right now. How could anybody ever see me as a professional? Well, that's not true. You guys let me talk here all the time without telling me to shut up. So I think that there is that level of imposter syndrome. And when you start thinking that you can't do it, you can't land the job, you can't go into that room and speak clearly and intentionally, well, then, yeah, that's what you're going to think of yourself as. So again, watching what's going on between the ears and saying, well, what if? Could I? Getting excited and trying to spin that positive. I know it can't be sunshine every day, but you need to remind yourself that, yes, you got the degree on purpose. You put in the requisite work. You can continue to do that and take that knowledge to an organization and apply it.
Thank you very much for that. Dr. Emmy, back to you.
I want to just give a quick pause of acknowledgement. So there is a really a difficult job market out there right now for several different professions. So things related to areas of like learning and development, some of your training type roles, right? Even in the technology sector, development, tech, that is a really stinky space right now for finding a job. And people that have never had trouble finding jobs in their whole technology careers are having difficulty finding jobs right now. And so I wanted to give some airspace there because I think when we kind of talk about all of these potential things that we could do and how to get there and navigate, the reality is that there's going to be students who graduate who maybe have a little bit of experience here and there, or who are doing some of these things and still might have trouble. There are people with 15, 20 years of experience in areas that are still having difficulty leveraging their networks or having conversations, right, and are kind of grinding right now in that space. And so I really felt like it was apt to just provide that sort of moment of airspace to say the job market overall right now is difficult in a lot of areas. And even if you do all of these things, that doesn't mean you will not be met with a challenge in finding work in this field beyond the degree, which is really kind of our whole topic for today, right? And I want to share also just compassion for that. We've gone through cycles, I think, in work industry for perpetuity, right? Where we have down times in certain areas, or maybe even entire revisions. I saw a stat somewhere where like pre-steel age jobs and post-steel age jobs that we've got maybe like 20% or something like that that survived long term after steel age. I'll have to go find that stat somewhere. But I think we are seeing a little bit of a revolution in some of our workspaces, at least in my sector, quite a bit of revolution happening in job descriptions and how jobs are changing and a lot of people out of work. So kind of that super scale is going to be also adaptability and being able to translate your role and your skill sets, your degree in many ways over time. I think that's that adaptability, which I think speaks to kind of the soft skills that Dr. Kim was talking about quite a while ago, right? But to me, that is the super scale is agility and adaptability. It is one of the things that I try to teach my team, even in fun game forms. I throw random things their way, and I'm like, do you need to adapt to this or not? I don't know. Let's play the game. But it's really to help build the muscle of shifting and priorities, shifting gears, and giving that acknowledgement. So at the end of the day, I think that's kind of the point there is the adaptability and agility is a super soft skill to be grasping in this time of change in our workplace. But just to give the acknowledgement, it's a rough market out there, and I don't want to pretend it's not, because I've had a lot of hard conversations with people having trouble finding jobs, and I very much have compassion for that right now, especially where there's new students with no experience. Right, that's a tough spot to be sometimes.
Um, this is a little bit off topic, but I saw a very interesting report about a week or so ago where they were describing the job culture in the United States of America compared to the job culture in Canada. And it seemed very much like Canada is ready for IO psychology. Like, we're very much into equality, diversity. We support all those things. There seems to be a shift sort of away from that in the United States. So, first of all, it's probably just a shift, and we're going to eventually get back to, getting on course. But what is the opportunity for IO psychologists, especially those students who are just coming out of university now, to look at other jurisdictions, maybe other countries where IO psychology might be? I mean, we've had a little bit of discussion over the last few years about Europe and the way things are growing with IO psychology there. It's a little bit different, but what is the opportunity to take my IO career international?
Yeah. So what came to mind as you were talking there was UNESCO. They've got some principles out there. Now, I usually tap into the UNESCO right to fair work or to decent work. I don't remember the exact terminology they use for that, but for me, it's rooted in that human centricity, keeping people at the core of our workplaces and acknowledging them as the central, most important part of the organization. Without us, without the human workers. I very much will personally advocate all the time that we're going to have a completely different society and organizations than we ever would. So, but UNESCO, I think, does a lot of external partnerships as well. That could be a really great place to look and see, because they do a lot of work. I think that's like the rights, of workers, and we're talking about in countries also where there's child labor happening and factories with grotesque conditions that people are working in, right? So those are maybe some grounds to kind of look out into the world and see how some of these major issues of safety or sustainability or viability in the workplace are being challenged, that might be a really ripe area to do learning, to be working in. If you're young and able to move, even maybe going and doing some work out in a different country, that might be a really fantastic way to get some muscle building.
Become an IO psychologist and see the world. Thank you very much for that, Dr. Emmy. Nick, back to you. Our time is running out. A great start, but if can you sort of sum this up with that perspective of either that graduate who's they're in their final year or they've just graduated, or someone who's maybe been out there for a couple of years trying to get into the field, but they're doing something else. What is the takeaway today?
There's so much that gets tied up in identity with work, and it's a very fraught sort of thing. And to Dr. Emmy's point, it is not kind out there. It's not fair. It's not consistent. Like I said, there are 1,000 ways to do it wrong. There's 1,000 ways to do it right. And you really just kind of have to take control of what you can take control of. If you follow your curiosities, you follow your passions, and you want to keep coming back to it day after day, then yeah, if you're looking for something, the hope is you will find it eventually. All too often, as I've said before, job seeking advice sounds a lot like dating advice. It's all very well intentioned, but it may not apply to your specific situation. So take what you can, take comfort in what you can, but know that nobody else is going to go find a career for you. You have to go out and build it through the connections that you make, the opportunities that you go after. And, you could be upset that you didn't start 6 years ago, or you can start today. There's so many places to be pessimistic, and you're really going to have to try and hold on to the optimism as much as you can. And there's no one right magic bullet answer that's going to say, this is how you get a job. And I think that, you really do have to just kind of keep signing up for the punishment that is the job market right now. And every once in a while, just get off the merry-go-round. Go turn off the TV. Go get off LinkedIn. Get away, recharge, and get back to it when you can. Know that it's an important thing. It's a hard thing to do. And if it was easy, everybody would do it. But to find a meaningful career does take some intention and some purpose and things like that.
Thank you very much for that. And if you are looking for some assistance or advice, let me just also put out there that the IO Psychology Career Accelerator course through CBOC is open. You can join that as well. Join those mentoring sessions, and you get to talk to wonderful people like this. So thank you very much, everyone, for your contribution today. I believe next week we're going to look at IO Psychology. We're going to have another open discussion. We're going to talk about cognitive agility. Building agility that outlasts change. And we, boy, is that topical today for our conversations and moving forward in the world, as Dr. Emmy said that we have. Oh, Amani, I see your hand up. Let's go to you quickly.
Yeah, I just wanted to kind of speak on what you just asked last about Canada and USA culture, and also talk about the importance of continuous learning, and which kind of brings out creativity within us, and then talk about something. When we talk about self-leadership, there's also trauma-informed leadership. So just us to know that certain words kind of a little bit traumatizing within organizations when you talk about things like DEI or inclusion and stuff. So solely those words could be trigger to most people, but that same very work is still being done within organizations, because you're not going to tell me you're going to be routing for connection, clarity, and alignment to get results within organizations without you kind of making each and everybody on board matter. And mattering needs you to kind of pivot back to what really matters to these people that you're really working with on a project and stuff. So in a way, you're still going to have to look into how you're going to be inclusive with these people. So the word itself, being inclusive or DEI, is kind of triggering, but then the work is still being done within organizations just to create that connection, clarity, and alignment, just to get results across board within organizations. So just wanted to say, as IO psychologists, we need to be creative and also look into those words, and also notice that if words like diversity, equity, and inclusion are kind of like triggering, where else can we be creative in bringing them out within organization, because they are still needed to kind of like include everybody to get results in organizations as we work with organizations. So that's what I just wanted to say.
That's a great add-on. Thank you very much for that, Amani. And thank you very much, everyone, for joining us this week. And if you are free and would like to have your voice heard, join us here Thursdays at 12 noon Eastern. Simply go to the CBOC website, get your free ticket, and share your voice. So thank you very much, everyone. And Nick, if you want to count us out, we'll see everyone back here in 1 week's time.
Counting out in 5, 4, 3, 2, and